Hello, it's Gail here from Three Wise Crafters and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be using some older products from Spellbinders, which includes the Cosmos backdrop and the coordinating layered Cosmos backdrop stencils. And I'm also using Floral View, but I'm only using the sentiment press plate and the coordinating die which comes with it. Now this press plate would be really good for Copic colouring, which I was also going to do today, but I decided to keep the video short and sweet, as I just wanted to let you all know that Spellbinders currently have a pre-summer sale on at the moment that they're calling a pre-summer super sale. So I'll have all the details of that sale listed in the video description below, and these three products from Spellbinders are included in that sale, along with a whole lot of other products. And some of those products are as low as $1 US each, so it's worth checking that sale out. So I also have my BetterPress system, which is also on sale, and I'm using Hammermill Premium Color Copy Cover in 100 pounds, and I already have this trimmed down to an A2 size. I'm using Distress inks in Wild Honey, Milled Lavender, Dusty Concord, Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn, and for doing the BetterPress impressions I am using the Spellbinders BetterPress black ink as well. So I have the Cosmos background press plate here on the BetterPress system ready. I have my cardstock here, and I just use Express It removable double-sided tape just to adhere that to a clear platen plate. So what I'll do, because this press plate is quite large and it's larger than a cardstock, I am just going to place it on the press plate so I have it roughly centered, and then I'm going to push down the platen on top, and then my cardstock will adhere to that, and I know that it's going to line up on my press plate where I want it to. So with the BetterPress ink, all I need to do with that is to do a swooshing motion, twisting back and forth as we go, and this will give a good coverage to our press plate. Now if you had the BetterPress black ink in the full-size ink pad, it would make it much quicker to cover your press plates with, especially when they're of this size. But we can see where the ink has gone and where we need to apply more ink on our press plate. Now this is quite a detailed press plate as well, so we want to make sure that we apply our ink all over so that it applies to our cardstock when we run it through our die cutting machine. Now because I'm not using the Spellbinders cotton card panels and I'm just using Hammermill, it's not going to give that letterpress effect on our card panel here, but that's okay, that doesn't worry me. So you can use other cardstock besides the cotton card panels, but you just won't get that letterpress impression that you might be looking for. So I'm going to run this through the die cutting machine and then I'll be right back. So I've run that through the die cutting machine, and this is what it looks like on our card panel. And I have my press plate upside down, but that doesn't matter when you're applying your ink to your card panel. It doesn't matter what way you've got it situated on the magnetic plate. Now to clean off the magnetic plate, all I need to do is use an old towel. Sorry, I wanted to move the platen out of your way because of the glare of the lights. So all I do with this is use either StazOn cleaner or Ranger Archival ink cleaner, and that'll clean it off really well. I have the StazOn open at the moment, so that's the one that I'm going to be using to clean it. And I just have the press plate on an old inky towel, and I just swoosh my StazOn over the press plate. Don't rub it back and forth like that, otherwise you'll damage this part of your StazOn or archival ink cleaner, and then you'll have some problems with either the cleaner coming out too quickly, too much, and you don't want that to happen. So just pounce it up and down and it will work fine to clean your press plate. You can always go back and apply more if you need to. So then I just use another towel and I rub that over the top to make sure I get all the ink off my press plate. And then, as you can see, that looks quite good. And then because the StazOn and the archival are an oil-based cleaner, I use the Spellbinders Mister Spray, and I just spray that over the top, and then I clean off the oily residue that the StazOn or archival ink cleaner has given. So you can also do the same on our magnetic plate here, and all I need to do is apply some of the cleaner. Make sure that you get all this yucky ink off first, and you'll see when it comes a bit cleaner like that compared to this is what our first ink was, and then we've got cleaner as we clean off the nozzle. So I can just apply that and use my finger on our magnetic plate, and that'll clean off the magnetic plate really well as well. And you saw how easy that was to do. Now what I like to do as well is to spray a bit of water on my cloth and then run that over the magnetic plate as well. And then I know my magnetic plate is clean for my next use. So I have my next card panel already taped down to the platen, and I have the die lined up on my magnetic plate just so that I knew where I needed to place my sentiment, so that I leave enough room up the top here to be able to die cut out the sentiment later. So I can remove that die now, and I can place my ink down on top of the press plate. Now it was really easy to line up this press plate, just using the grid lines that are on the on the magnetic base plate, and it made it so much easier to line it up. So I've got my ink there, and I'm just putting the platen on top, and I'll run that through the die cutting machine and be right back. So we've finished going through the die cutting machine, and we can see how our sentiment looks now, and it looks really pretty, and you can see the script has worked really well. So I like using the press plate for sentiments, and I love doing press plate sentiments in the hot foil machine as well. So if you haven't tried that yet and you have a hot foil machine, make sure that you give it a go. So I just have my Tim Holtz Sidekick little die cutting machine here, and I've trimmed down the card panel so that it will fit through this machine. And I'm not sure about you, but I certainly can't wait for the Spellbinders Scouts to be available. I think because the opening's wider than the Sidekick, it will suit me really well to be able to use that on my desk during videos. So I'm really excited for that. I haven't pre-ordered it yet, but you can certainly pre-order those machines if you want to. And Spellbinders has some one exclusive colour available on their website that you won't be able to get anywhere else other than from Spellbinders. So make sure to check that out. So I'm just putting down some best ever craft tape just to hold my die in place while I run it through. and then we'll be done that part. It helps if you have your die cutting machine the right way. And then we have our sentiment already done to put onto our card panel. So I have my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station here, and I use this for all of my stenciling. So I'm just going to put my card panel down. It already has the double-sided adhesive on it from when we ran it through the BetterPress system. So that will just stick down onto the Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station, which is magnetic as well. And I've got my stencils here, and we will be able to start applying some ink. So I have a stencil lined up with a card panel, and the first ink color that I'm going to use is milled lavender. So I have the stencil taped down with Best Ever craft tape, just for the extra security of making sure that my card panel and the stencil don't move. So I don't usually use purples a lot, but I thought that I would use purples on my card today. I really like milled lavender as a color, and I just thought that instead of using my usual colors of pink, I would use milled lavender and dusty concord for some purple colors today. So we'll see how it all looks at the end, and I'm just going in and applying that ink in circular motions, going both clockwise and anti-clockwise. So I'm not sure how you clean your stencils, but I use rubbing alcohol to clean off my stencils. And I have some here that I just get from my local supermarket in Australia, and it's only 64% volume of alcohol, and it still works well with cleaning off your stencils. Now, as you can see, my towel here is very inky, but it'll work well for what I need it to do today, with just spraying on the rubbing alcohol. And then I use another cloth. I need to put more rubbing alcohol in here. The good thing about these ones is that it comes in a spray bottle, but you can get larger bottles to fill up your small bottle. So it works out quite reasonably price-wise to do that. And I just get this from Woolworths in Australia. And I'm sure wherever you live there will be a similar product. So then I just use another towel and rub that over my stencil. Now, because this stencil is quite solid, I can rub back and forth. But if you had little bits sticking up like this here, you need to take your time, otherwise you can bend your stencil. So I have a second stencil here already lined up on our card panel, and I'm using Dusty Concord to fill in the rest of the flowers on our card, and this will coordinate then with the milled lavender. So again, I'm just going back and forth and applying a light coverage. And hopefully this will tone in well with our milled lavender. I've never used these colours together before, so we'll soon see if it works or it doesn't work. And I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. You have some artistic liberty with your card making, and as long as you like it, that's all that really matters. So these inks will dry back a little bit, so even though it looks a bit splotchy at the moment, it will settle back a little bit. So that looks quite pretty actually. I don't mind the colours on there. So I'm happy with how that turned out. So I have our third stencil lined up, and this is doing our flower centers. So for the flower centers, I'm using wild honey, and I tend to use wild honey a fair bit when I'm doing stenciling. I just like the color of it. You could use 2 inks and give a bit of shading, but if you apply a heavier hand in one area, you're going to get a heavier shading anyway, and that just saves you having to use 2 inks on your card. So I just want a little bit heavier shading up the top of our flower centers. And sometimes it will automatically happen for you, just depending on how you apply the ink. So I'm just quickly doing these. Doesn't take long to do this card at all with all the stenciling. The longest time really is cleaning off your stencils in between, or you might leave all your cleaning until the end and clean it in soap and water. I tend to clean as I go and prefer to use the rubbing alcohol. My stencils are dry straight away then, and it just makes it easier. Especially if you're making a lot of cards in one go of the same type. It just means that you can move on to your next colour or next card really easy. So we've finished that one as well. And that is really looking pretty now. So our 4th stencil is down, and I'm using Twisted Citron for this stencil layer. Now with these little leaves in here, you could have brought in another colour and ink blended them a different colour to these bigger leaves, but I'm just going to do it all in the same colour today, just because it's quicker and easier to do that. And if I brought in another colour, then it's going to make this video longer, and I was aiming to do a shorter video. My videos tend to be on the longer side, and I have another Spellbinders video coming up soon that's going to be very detailed in the card that I'm doing, and I'm looking forward to doing that card. Actually, it's something that I like to do. I like to make more detailed and creative cards, but I also like doing these ones as well that are quick and easy to do. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel and check back regularly so that you know when I've uploaded the next Spellbinders one, because it's going to use the window with a view collection, and it's going to be a trifold card, so it's going to be multi-layered. So we've finished that one, and we've just got our 5th stencil to do, and then we're finished. So I have our 5th and final stencil lined up, and for this layer I am using Mowed Lawn. So the leaves on this stencil are a bit more open, as you can see, but again, it's not going to take much to apply down the ink. Now, I really like using Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn together for shading on leaves. That works really well. But you use whatever inks that you have in your stash, and you can do similar colour combinations with what inks you have. You don't have to use exactly the same inks that I'm using. And you might absolutely hate the colour purple and prefer to do a different colour. So this stencil is now very green, and I will clean that off with the rubbing alcohol. So all our ink blending is done with our stencils. Now all we need to do is to put the card panel on a card base and put our sentiment on, and it's finished. So while I've got my make art station out, I thought I might just go around our sentiment with the milled lavender just to add a bit of colour to it. I don't want to add too much, but it will take away the white effect that it has on our card panel. So to me that's too white and stark, so I just wanted to add a little bit of colour to the outline. And I'll zoom in a little bit. This might go a little bit fuzzy, and I apologise for that, but at least you'll be able to see. So I'm just using the milled lavender and just going to go around the edge and bring that in just to take away the starkness a bit of the white. So I still have a little bit of double-sided adhesive on the back of this, so it is going to stick to my magnetic make art station, but that's okay. So this just saves having a solid piece of cardstock that can take away from the look that you're trying to get on your finished card. And it just gives it that little bit of colour to take away that starkness of the white. And now when you put it on the card panel, it's not as white, so I quite like that effect on there. So I have my score pal here, and I have Nina Solar White in 110 pounds, and I use that for all of my card bases. And all I'm going to do is line that scoring tool up with the 4 1/4 inch and run that back and forth. I just do that a couple of times just to make sure that the score line is impressed enough, and then we can fold that over, making sure that it lines up as straight as possible. Sometimes when I cut my cardstock, I don't always cut it as straight, or it's come from the mill not perfectly cut as well. So that's my card base done, and then we'll be able to put our card panel and our sentiment on. Just to make it easier to put our card panel on our card base, I'm just going to use a little bit of tape and place that inside our card base, and that will just make it stick down, and this will then stay in place to make it easier to adhere our card panel that we've done all the stenciling on. So what I'll do to stick that down is I will use some Gina K designed Connect glue, and I will just quickly run that over our background. And I don't put too much on because the ink that we've used on our card panel is water reactive. That sometimes is absorbed by your card panel that you've used and will change the effect of your card panel. So what I do is I line up this top left hand corner first, and then I drop down my card panel, lining it up down the side. Now this I haven't lined up as good as what I normally do, but it might be that my card base is actually off a little bit. Now with the glue you can reposition that really easily, a lot easier than if you're using tape. So I just smooth that down a bit, and our A2 card panel that we've stenciled is now adhered to our card base. So all I'm going to do for our sentiment is to use some foam squares, and the foam squares that I use are scrapbook adhesive. Now these ones that I've got here are 2mm thick or 0.08 of an inch thick. I also have the 1mm or the 0.04 inch thickness as well, and I'm just going to use some of the bigger square ones and place those down on like little flower petals, you could call it, and that should be enough to adhere our sentiment to our card. And I find taking off these backing pieces are really easy on these foam squares. I have trouble with double-sided sticky tape for some reason. And I'm just going to line that up in the center as close as I can. Okay. And there we have our finished card. So I hope that you've enjoyed watching today's video and that you check out the Spellbinders sale, and all the details are listed in the video description below, so make sure that you check that out. If you have enjoyed today's video, please make sure that you give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for future videos. Thank you so much for watching.